Good evening and welcome to tonight's program. My name is Amy Bach. I'm so glad you were able to make the time to register and be with us this evening. We'll be talking about navigating your dwelling claim and understanding scope of loss. And I'm so happy to be joined by two of my favorite people, as well as the staff of Team Up that will be helping answer questions that you can put into the Q&A as we go. If we don't get to your questions tonight, we will get to them at our Q&A on March 2nd. So we are offering tonight's program both in English and Spanish. So if you go down to the control bar, your Zoom control bar, you'll see that little planet looking thing. You want to choose English or Spanish, and that will give you the audio of your choice. Oops, sorry about that. A little too fast. Okay. By popular demand, we have made the slide deck for tonight's program available on our website. It's already up. So if you want to, you can certainly see the deck on your screen. I'm gonna be advancing the slides as we go through the information. But if you also want to have it either for your own reference or if it's easier for you to watch the deck at your own pace, you're welcome to click on the link that's circled in red and then or go to our website, uphelp.org, put that in, that link in. You'll find it under events there. Okay. UP, United Policyholders, 30 years and climbing as a trusted information resource and respected voice for insurance consumers in all 50 states, with a specialty in disaster recovery. We're not for profit, not for sale. We don't take funding from insurance companies, so we can give you unbiased and independent information. And we're funded by donations and grants. So I want to thank the Community Foundation of Boulder for supporting the program that we are bringing to you, those of you who've been impacted by the Marshall Fire. Our team consists of professional staff. Tonight I have with me Val Brown helping answer questions. I've got Eva Nguyen, you can't see her, but she's helping. And we've got Sandy Watts. And then some of you, if you've been on our some of the other programs we've been offering, you know that we have very valuable partners in government, including Boulder County and the Colorado Division of Insurance. We also work with FEMA and many other help organizations that are a source of information and support. We also have volunteers, very important to our ability to support you on your journey. And one of those volunteers is with us tonight, Bob Hunnis. He has walked the path you're walking. He's not quite done, and you'll hear from him in a minute. But thank you, Bob, for being with us. And a lot of the information that we bring to you in these educational programs comes from our volunteers in professions like law, taxes, real estate, construction, but also from people like yourselves who have been through a tragedy and learned some lessons along the way about strategies and best practices for getting through this difficult process. And we do our best to incorporate all of your wisdom, your questions, your experiences in the information that we bring to you. We're here tonight through our Roadmap to Recovery program. We do work through 2 other programs, but tonight we're focused on your recovery and supporting you in your recovery. If you haven't gotten one of these little yellow books and you'd like one, you can email info@. We also are going to be distributing them. Val, are you able to speak audibly? I know you're helping out with the translation. I believe these books are also going to be available at the resource centers that are in Superior. But anyway, email at info at, and we'll make sure that you get information on how to get one. These are our upcoming events. There's next Wednesday, we will be walking you through some of the best practices for your income tax returns. We will have with us one of the leading experts in the country on casualty loss tax considerations. So I really encourage you to dial in for that. Val Brown will be leading that workshop with some of our CPA volunteers that really know their stuff in this area. We also have, as you may know, these survivor to survivor forums that we offer. They're non-technical. They're different from the program we're bringing you tonight, which is an educational program with some technical information on your insurance claim. But the survivor to survivor forums are for emotional support and sort of hanging out in a safe space online with other people who can relate to what you're going through. Then on March 2nd, we will be having another one of our Q&As where we will have a panel of experts, including people from the the Division of Insurance in Colorado. We will have a practicing Colorado attorney. We will have some public adjusters that practice also in your state, as well as our staff to answer the questions that either we don't get to tonight or that you pre-submit. So you can see the link there to submit your questions in advance, and I encourage you to do that. We then will be coming back in early March with a program on underinsurance, which we know is a problem a lot of you are grappling with. And then at the end of March, we will be covering contents claim strategies, preparing an inventory if you have to, and ways to try to make that process, which we know is extremely challenging, a little bit easier for you and your household. Then hopefully you all have visited our library and know about the resources that we have there. A reminder that we're just here to give you information and general guidance, not legal advice. We do have a find help directory where you can find Colorado licensed lawyers, public adjusters, and that's the place to go if you want to get an answer to a legal question. We will be hosting a pro bono free legal help clinic later in March, and that's still getting organized. Okay, so my name again is Amy Bach, and I am founder of the organization and the current executive director. I'm very pleased to be here tonight. I'm going to introduce my fellow panelists in a minute. So I think you've probably heard me speak already, and you have the feeling for where I'm coming from. I'm a consumer advocate attorney, and I have dedicated my career to trying to protect you as an insurance consumer and fight for fair laws and get you the information you need to collect the full benefits that you're entitled to, and make sure that you get the full protection of all the laws that are on the books to help you with getting a fair settlement. So happy to be joined by Sandy Watts. Sandy, if you want to just give a quick hello.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Nice to see you all tonight. We're just going to go through the dwelling part of your claim. I have a background in claims and claims management, so I can give you some pointers from an adjuster's point of view, and hopefully that'll be helpful.
Thank you. Very happy also to be joined by Bob Hunnis. Bob, as you can see, lost a home in the 2020 East Troublesome Fire. So he, as I said, is in some ways still walking on the path that you're on, but he is quite a bit farther down the road and has construction expertise. Bob, you want to just say a few words?
Good evening. Sorry to say that we're all part of a select group of fire survivors, but it does get better as time goes on. So just a little background. My real career, I was a structural engineer for 40 years, working on buildings for architects and builders to keep their buildings standing up. I retired 14 years ago, and somewhere along that line, my wife and I have built 2 homes for ourselves, including the one that burned in the East Troublesome fire. And that was a total loss, just like most of the people are suffering from Marshall Fire. We are 16 months or 17 months now into our process. Still have not fully settled our dwelling claim, although the word is we're supposed to get something this week. We'll see. I'll believe it when the check arrives. So anyway, I can speak a little bit from a fire survivor standpoint. I've been working with the Grand County Builders Association as a liaison, trying to help people in Grand County recover from the fire. And since we built our own homes, we have a fair amount of construction experience. So anyway, be interested to hear questions and contribute what we can.
Okay, well, thanks again, Bob. And as I said, Bob has been a volunteer now with our organization. We're so grateful. Not only has he contributed to some of our previous webinars, but he also was one of the witnesses that slogged through many hours waiting to give input to your Colorado elected officials on why they need to reform the laws about how insurers handle claims to try to lessen some of the burdens on you with regard to paperwork and all that. So Bob, thanks again for going a little extra mile and working with us. So we're going to be covering these 8 points tonight. Best practices for keeping your insurance claim on track, what benefits are available in your policy to replace your dwelling. We're not going to go too deep on that. Hopefully you had listened in last week when we did the deeper dive on that topic, but we're going to do a quick recap on the highlights there. Then we're going to cover what your options are for replacing a destroyed home. We're going to talk about how the process of reaching agreement on the dwelling portion of your claim generally works. We're going to talk about what a scope of loss is and how it's different from an estimate and why that matters. We're going to talk about why calculating the as-was cost to replace the home you had is so important. We're going to talk about calculating the as-was cost, correcting errors in insurance adjusters' estimates. And then we will finish up with an examination of closing gaps between insurer and builder estimates and reaching agreements on the replacement cost of your dwelling. So that's our agenda for tonight. So just a little bit of a recap on best practices, because we are at our heart, UP, a do-it-yourself proponent, meaning you've already paid for coverage and good claim service, and we want you to get that. That's a big reason we're here. We want to communicate to you what you probably already have figured out or digested from us. The more you understand about your insurance benefits, your rights, and the value of your losses, the more benefits you will recover and the smoother your claim will go. And that is really another way of us saying being proactive is the best approach here, because when it comes to a claim where there's a large sum of money at issue, it's not like what you see on TV for most people. And, you know, the insurance company is not there with a magic wand and an open checkbook. They're there with a process that you need to get through. So we're here to empower you to get through that process. So giving your insurance company and adjuster a chance to do the right thing is important, but don't be a pushover. You know, we be realistic about the fact that you're basically in a business negotiation, not sort of this touchy-feely scenario that you see in the ads. So when interacting with an adjuster, of course, given that you get more flies with honey, but we encourage you to be that squeaky wheel that gets paid. 2 words describe the approach that's most likely to get you what you need. Polite assertiveness. We talk about speaking up, and when we say that, we mean present requests clearly and in writing, explain what you need, when you need it, and why you're entitled to it. Keep a claim journal with notes on who you talked to, when, and what was said. Do your best, and I know it's easier said than done, to keep all of your paperwork organized and together, especially receipts, as you replace things and incur expenses because you've lost the use of your home. We have recommend that you have a working copy of your policy that you can write on, and then that you be prepared to ask the adjuster when need be. Please show me where it says that in my policy. Sometimes, and you've heard this and you know this already probably, big variety among adjusters in experience, in their personalities, in their level of diligence. So keeping a good record is really important. That journal is going to help you keep moving forward, even when an adjuster, you don't hear back for a while, or the adjuster rotates out. Very common. And it's been tried and true that having a written record will really help you keep moving forward. And the paper trail is really essential to a fair claim settlement because it confirms the ways that you're cooperating in the insurance company's investigation, points out specific things they may have done or not done that is holding up your settlement. It reminds them about your stress, gives them reasonable and specific time frames. And then the last piece is really important. It gives you leverage in a mediation or lawsuit. Now, the last thing we want for you is to have to get involved in a lawsuit. But at the end of the day, for most people, your home is your most valuable asset, and it's very important to your household's financial health that you get a good settlement. And if you need to, then one of the ways that you can get there is by flexing your legal muscle if you need to. Now, again, not people's preferred way, obviously, but it is there for you if you need it. There are some very strong laws in Colorado that can help you, and that paper trail is really important. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Sandy Watts to walk you through what benefits are available, how to figure out how much money you've got to work with. So this is just going to be a recap of what we did at our last session.
Yeah, and if you guys would like to see that, you can go to uphelp.org/events and look in past events. And it's how to read and understand your policy. So hi, everybody. I have to remember to slow down for the interpreter, so I apologize. Let's talk about your buckets. Hopefully you guys have this pretty situated by now, but coverage A are your base dwelling limits. You have other structures, and then you have, and we're just dealing with your building tonight. You have other coverages that are available within the policy, like your trees and shrubs, and then through and your replacement cost coverage, and then endorsements like extended replacement cost coverage and building code upgrade coverage. So we're going to talk about all of these. Next slide, please. So this is just a declarations page, just to show you an example. You've got up in the upper left there, the coverage A dwelling amount, next to it coverage B other structures. We'll talk about that. Down below in our little highlighted boxes, you have limited home replacement costs. So the limited home replacement costs that I put there is to remind you that some of these things have different names with different companies. So sometimes it's called increased dwelling. If you're a State Farm policyholder, it's option ID, increased dwelling. Some call it, Allstate calls it BISREL, building structure extended replacement something. So they have different names. So keep a lookout. And then at the bottom there, we have our building code upgrade limits. So just an example, go ahead. This is just another example. I won't go through it again, but just to show you that things are different If you look next to the second arrow, that's an example of lists of endorsements. So that's what you want to look for, unfortunately, if you're having trouble figuring out which is which. So.
And so I just want to point out, because we're gonna get to this in a minute. If you look at the right side column that says description, where it says OTHSTRINCRLIM, so that stands for other structure increased limit. That's the kind of example of how much variation you're going to find in policies. Is that's something that you don't see in a lot of policies, but that's an example of some increased coverage that you would have. And the only way you'd know that you had it is if you really look carefully at this deck page.
Okay. So one of the most important things you hear people talk about is replacement cost. So one of the common sort of misconceptions that we hear from people is, I have replacement cost. Why won't my insurance company pay the full amount to replace my house? Replacement cost is a term that came about. Actual cash value was the way that policies were originally written, sort of like your car. If you have an old car and you crash it, you won't get the amount for the new car. You'll only get the amount for the age of your car. So that's the same idea with, sorry, Amy, you move around your cursor and it throws, when you move your cursor, I can see it and it throws me off. I'm
so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I'm easily distracted. Like
I won't do that. I will not do that.
I'm like a squirrel, so I apologize.
I will not do that.
So replacement cost is the cost to put your home back together, what it costs to rebuild the home you lost, up to the policy limits. And policy limits are the things we're going to talk about, your coverage A dwelling. Okay, so it doesn't mean that they're going to replace your whole house if your policy is too low, unfortunately. I know a lot of you are sadly in that position. Actual cash value is replacement cost less reasonable depreciation. So if you look at the bottom of that little stack there, you've got a deduction in the value of materials due to wear and tear. It's very important that they only deduct materials and not things like labor because they don't wear out. So we only deduct things that wear out. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, extended replacement cost. That's what Amy was just speaking about when she was talking about the declarations page. This is something that's on most policies today, but it's an additional amount over your coverage A limits, okay? And they were originally intended to provide additional funds in cases of severe disasters. So it's good we have them, but you know, sometimes it's not even enough. Like Amy pointed out, it's going to be maybe added by an endorsement that you might have to look for on your declarations page. Sometimes it's outlined in the loss settlement provisions, which is a portion of your policy. The names of this vary. Sometimes, like I said, State Farm is increased dwelling. Allstate is that BizRel. And, you know, it's usually extended replacement cost or extra replacement cost, that type of thing. The limits are almost always reflected as a percentage, and they vary all the way from 10% up to, I've seen 200%. So most policies, this benefit usually only applies to coverage A, to your main dwelling structure, but there are some policies out there. State Farm's policy, for example, does extend that coverage that to, in some policies, to A, B, and C. Under Colorado law, you should have been offered 20% of coverage A when they sold your policy. Is that correct, Amy? I want to make sure.
Yeah. It's just like the ALE. They were supposed, the law in Colorado says they're supposed to, when you buy your policy or you renew, the agent is supposed to offer you 24 months instead of 12 of temporary rent coverage, and they're supposed to offer you 20% ERC, extended replacement. That's going to be a fact situation for each of you as to whether or not that actually happened.
Okay, excellent, thank you. These are examples of different policies, and it just kind of shows you the difference in policy language. And I might have misspoke. Some state farm policy, I could be wrong. This is an option ID increased dwelling. I was thinking about this as Amy was talking. This particular one just says replace damaged building structures. Okay, so it is important to read and see. So I misspoke on that. It's 10% of the option for coverage A dwelling and dwelling extension. So I did misspeak. So sorry if I gave you hope there. This is another one. This is actually a declarations page from State Farm. And they usually put the exact amount. So if you've got your increased dwelling, they'll give you this like 93,000, and then the ordinance or law. That's nice. This is just an example of another policy, and this is also just building structure. So you have to read it. Code upgrade coverage. Okay. So code upgrade coverage is another sort of what we call add-on coverage. It's endorsed on. Most of the time when you read your policy, you'll go to policy exclusions and it'll say code upgrades are specifically excluded. And in most cases these days, code upgrade coverage is provided, but it's provided as an endorsement. And that's true really for homeowners policies. If you have a rental dwelling, it's not as common. So your policy has to provide this coverage or you don't get it, okay? And that's what they mean by as was. So code upgrade coverage pays for things that weren't there. So you'll hear us talk a lot about the replacement, the cost to replace your building that you lost exactly as it was prior to the fire. Okay, so the codes change. So if your house was built you know, whenever in the 80s or whatever, the codes change annually, and so you're not required every year to bring your house up to code. So when you have a loss though and you have to rebuild, then the building department requires you to do these things. And a lot of them, some of them are things that were never there before. Solar panels, California, we have electric car chargers, you know, things like that. Insulate, there's a lot of things for energy efficiency that are required now. So these pay for things that weren't there before. So it's a really good benefit. And if you have it, you know, you need to get an estimate. So company adjusters are usually not familiar with local codes, and a lot of times they won't include it on their estimate that you receive. So we usually recommend getting a separate bid from a local contractor with that information.
So I'm going to stop for a second and ask Bob, if you can share with us, Bob, in your county, in your area, did the county publish any kind of guidance for the wildfire impacted folks on what code upgrades they're likely to have to include in their rebuild projects?
So no, the county itself did not publish that, although they have been helpful in some phone calls and giving people general guidance. But it turns out this is a big deal. If people have this coverage in their policy, it's almost guaranteed that the codes have changed enough that they should be able to max out whatever their policy limits are for code upgrade. Now, the one exception to that might be if someone lost a home that was only built in the last year or two, there might not be significant code upgrades, but I believe I heard that either Louisville or Superior adopted some new codes last summer, just before the fire, 6 months before the fire. And apparently some of the provisions in those codes are going to have significant cost implications. So in that case, even someone that had a relatively recent home might be entitled to their policy limits or some pretty big numbers.
And
In
so
our
how,
case,
sorry, go ahead.
the home we lost was permitted 20 years ago. And there have been 6 code upgrades since then. Actually, codes are not up, at least in Colorado, they're not upgraded every year. It's on a 3-year cycle, and not all jurisdictions adopt every new code. But in our situation, there had been 6 code upgrades, and it was not very difficult to go through the details of those. And I identified $150,000 of replacement costs to upgrade our home to something that was permitted 20 years ago.
Wow.
So I'd really encourage people to focus on this. It's an area that I've been working on, and I've developed, or I'm in the process of developing a list of code upgrade items that are applicable, particularly in Grand County. Many of them will be applicable in Boulder County or Louisville, Superior also. But there are a lot of other more detailed nuances that those local jurisdictions have put in their codes, particularly related to energy upgrades in the last few years. So this is one that it's going to be important for people to focus on, trying to max out this piece if you even have this coverage, and not everyone will have it.
Yeah. So we will absolutely be offering more guidance on this topic as we go forward. And because we're working closely with the Boulder County as well as the towns of Louisville and Superior, I know that there will be more guidance available to all of you. And also on our website at uphelp.org, you will find a sample of an estimate that breaks out code upgrades and in both as items, and then with some pricing to help you there to get your mind around that. Okay, back to you, Sandy.
Okay, yeah, and hopefully, the local jurisdictions will settle it all out. There's some people talking about neighbors fighting over the building codes, and that does happen. That happened in California after the big campfire, and the governor actually stepped in and took out some requirements. So that'll settle down at some point, and hopefully the building departments in your areas and your towns will get something together. So this is just a sample. This happens to be a state farm policy with building code ordinance or law. And this is the purpose of this slide is to show you that some policies will pay for both the damaged and undamaged portions of the building, and some policies won't. So you have to look at the specific wording of your policy, and then also where this arrow is, this is an additional amount of insurance and applies only to the dwelling. Now, code upgrade is usually its own bucket, but there are some policies that don't have this additional amount. And I just answered a question in the Q&A. It's always like a percentage. So even if it's 10%, it's its own bucket, but some policies have it inside coverage A, but the majority of them have it as additional amount of insurance. So,
All right.
Again,
I know. I can't look at the questions without messing you up.
Yeah. So this is just another sample endorsement of code upgrade coverage. I believe this is an all-state policy. It just tells you, oh, this one at the bottom. This is my my slide that tells you why it's worth reading your policy. If you look down here at the bottom, special limit of liability in the event of a covered loss from an ISO, that's the insurance services, declared catastrophe. The limit available for building ordinance and law coverage is increased by 100%. So that was something this guy found like almost a year into his claim. And it was also for extended replacement costs on his policy. So it's really important I know it's really dry, but it's really important to read these policies. Go ahead.
No, I did.
Mine did not move.
Okay. How about now?
There we go. Okay. So coverage B, other structures. This is like it shows there on that sample declaration. This is another bucket, one of our buckets of coverage. It's usually 10% of coverage A. And again, looking at your policy, they're most usually things that are separated from the home by clear space, okay? So think about retaining walls and fences, gazebos, pools, detached garages, and so forth. Okay, these are some examples. These are just, this is pulled straight from our How to Read Your Policy. So when things are in bold on in your policy, that means that if you go into the definition of the policy, they'll define that term. So sometimes that's really, really important. So these are just examples of other structure coverage, and you guys can read these. You guys can read these later. Okay,
Sandy, if I could interject just a little bit on other
Sure.
structures. Our policy is a state farm policy, and if you read it closely, you'll find that other structures are broadly defined. And so they can include septic systems, which would be septic tank or leach
Mhm.
field. They can include farm gates. They can include outside fences in many cases. In our case, there were 2 outbuildings. Our underground propane tanks had to be repaired. Basically, anything that is not enclosed in the walls of your dwelling can probably fall under the term other structures. So it's worth reading the fine print in your policy and trying to find as many ways that you can bring these other structures in as a separate bucket.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we have people asking questions like, does that include solar panels? So like if your solar panels are attached to your house, that's a good question to demonstrate. If they're attached to your house, they're coverage A. If they're solar panels that I've seen lately that are like in the yard, then that would be an other structure, okay? And then there's a question about rocks and landscape. And so driveways are usually other structures, but some policies you have to read about like hardscaping, landscaping. Sometimes it is other structure and sometimes it's landscaping. So plants are definitely not other structures. We're getting a ton of questions about that. So landscaping, plants would not be other structures, but sometimes, like if it's a fence, a decorative fence or a gazebo, hardscaping. But you have to read your policy because some of them actually say that other structures have to be structures. Same thing with air conditioning units. If it's attached to the house, usually the air conditioning unit is part of coverage A. Okay, so moving on. This is just an example, and this is available on our website. UP Help Publications. Here's the link. And this is just a spreadsheet that helps you keep track of your limits. So your coverage is up there in the upper left, your estimates below it, and the total. And then when you get payments, you can keep track of your payments and see when you've hit your limit. So these are good tools to use. Okay, and this is just reminding you, hopefully you guys know about this, that there's a new Colorado Department of Insurance bulletin that says that if you request it, the insurance company has 10 days from the date of your request to provide you with a written explanation of the coverages and coverage limit, okay? And this is actually part of the bulletin. They have to give you the description, special limits, additional coverages. And if you go back and you watch that, how to read and understand your policy, you'll find out there's a lot of little like trees and shrubs and plants is 5%. Debris removal, sometimes you get an additional 5%. So there's a lot of little things in there. And so this is a really good bulletin. So
Okay, well, I'll take a deep breath. But before we do, I just want to remind you that spreadsheet, that link that we just gave you, that was created by a fire survivor, donated to us. It's available for you for free. But we really have observed firsthand over all these years that there's no one size fits all approach to staying organized. And so, if there's a tool that we offer that's a little bit overwhelming for you, there may be a better way to do it. We're not here to tell you that that's the way you should do it, but a lot of what you'll find under our samples and our tools are things that were created by somebody in your situation that helped them. And that doesn't mean it's going to help you, but we certainly hope that it will.
Did you advance it? Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to cover what your options are for replacing a destroyed home. This is a visual example to give you what you already know, that you have the ability to rebuild the house just as it was, stick for stick. You can rebuild a different house. You can buy a different house, or you can rebuild elsewhere, not on your lot. Those are options. But no matter which of those options you choose, the first place to start, of course, is going to be how much insurance do you have? Is it enough to replace the home you had? Do you want to replace the home you had? But all roads lead back to how much money is your insurance policy going to generate for you? And that's obviously what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. And then if you're underinsured, what are your options? But all roads lead back to the same place, which is, what does the insurance company owe you? And that's always going to be what it would cost, hypothetically, if you were to put that house back the way it was, if you were to rebuild it. That doesn't mean you have to do that, but that is the measure of what they owe you. And a lot of people will get off track because it's very rare that people want to replicate what they had. Most people want to downsize or upsize, or they want a different style. But we're here to remind you that the best way to be able to keep moving forward is to reach an agreement with your insurance company over that hypothetical cost, because a lot of people want to skip that step, and a lot of adjusters will kind of try to skip that step as well. But the bottom line is that is really one of the most important things to nail down, is that hypothetical rebuild cost. So if you want to buy, the process is almost identical. You've got to figure out how much it would have cost if you did rebuild, try to reach an agreement with your insurer on that, and then you know what your budget is for buying a new home. If you do want to pursue that option of buying a replacement home, the law is not settled in Colorado as much as it is in the state of California. And so there's some negotiating that's going to have to happen. But basically, you want to reach an agreement with the insurer, as I said, on that hypothetical as was rebuild, and then find a home that costs at least as much as it would have cost to rebuild as was. Present that real estate documentation to your insurer. Issues that may arise if you want to exercise this option: the insurer may try to deduct land value from what they'll pay toward the purchased replacement home. So for example, you find a home, let's say you reached an agreement that it would have cost $500,000 to rebuild the same house that you had, and you find a home that costs $500,000. Some insurers will say, well, we're going to shave $100,000 off of what we pay you. We're just going to give you $400,000. That we don't feel that's fair. We don't feel that's right. But it's a little unsettled, so you're going to have to negotiate your way through that. You have as ammo on your side, you could have what has gone down in California, which is that insurers were trying to do that, and the legislature said, no, you cannot do that. And so there's some precedent. It's not the law in your state, but it still is got some weight to it. And we do know that insurers are taking different approaches to this. And we give you some arguments on our website for that you can make as to why the deduction, the land value deduction, is not fair. So other issues that may arise, it can be challenging to find a home that costs exactly what your hypothetical rebuild would cost. You can add to the budget to the purchase from your own resources if you can. People sometimes ask, well, if I buy a house that's smaller or has a lesser value, can I still collect that same, let's say you find a house that's 400,000 that you like, but the as was replacement value of your home is 500. No, you cannot pocket that 100K difference. At least I've never heard of any insurer agreeing to that. Then the other challenge for all of you, of course, is that the timing really matters. That in a competitive real estate market like you have in your area, if a home comes up that you want to buy, you want to jump on it, but it can be difficult to get your insurer to commit the money that you're going to need quickly enough for you not to lose that. So those are just issues that may come up. That's not to discourage you for pursuing that option. So I'm going to bounce it back to Sandy, and we're going to talk about how does the process of reaching agreement on the dwelling portion of your claim generally work in real life. And Bob, I welcome you to pop in when you have observations here as well.
Okay. Hopefully you guys will get to this section of your claim fairly soon. As you know, usually the dwelling claim process begins with your adjuster contacting you, maybe visiting, the site where your home was, and preparing a scope of loss, okay, a list of your damages. Hopefully they have interviewed you, okay, because this should really include a lot of details regarding the materials, the quantities, what type of house you had, to repair it. We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between a scope or an estimate. A lot of what you're going to see are in these, you'll hear Exactimate. Exactimate is a software estimating system that most of the insurance companies use. There's another one called Symbility that some of the carriers are starting to use now. It's just basically a computerized software. You need to remember it's garbage in, garbage out. I answered a question for someone who talked about having a house next door that was similar to their own, but the Exactimate estimates were $350,000 apart. The estimate's only as good as the information that goes into it. So you really need to remember that, and we'll talk about that. But this is what you'll see. So let's go ahead and move on.
I will. I just want to ask Bob a question. Bob, in your journey, did you encounter any impacted neighbors or contacts where their insurer did not use Exactimate as the basis for their dwelling valuation and settlement offer?
No, every neighbor that I've dealt with was given an Exactimate estimate. And
Okay.
I think it's fair, at the risk of seeming prejudicial, Exactimate is a very clumsy, difficult to use, difficult to understand piece of software. I believe almost all of the companies use it. Very few of the adjusters really understand it or know how to use it well. And it is very common that they start out with unit costs that are not at all appropriate for our part of the country. In fact, what we saw, of course, Grand County, we're in a climate zone 7, we're at 9,000 feet. Our adjusters typically came from either Atlanta or Houston, and many of them didn't have construction experience. And so the estimates that they generated were absurdly out of line, way too low to be at all reasonable. And Sandy's quip about garbage in, garbage out is absolutely right. So just because it's a computer estimate does not give it credibility.
Right, right. You know, they often, they look pretty good because they're like, you know, big, what, a half an inch, 3/4 of an inch of paper and very detailed, and they look fancy and impressive. But that doesn't mask the fact that they're often very off on the pricing.
Well, it was
Okay,
ironic. The first of my neighbors that actually got their Xactimate estimate very quickly shared it with me. It was either 93 or 103 pages. And I sat down with our builder. Both of us have extensive construction background. And in about 20 minutes, we identified about $180,000 that was left out. But we weren't even quibbling with the numbers that were in there. We were just saying, well, wait a minute, they don't have anything for architectural fees or for soils engineers or for testing, or it was porta potty, dumpsters. It was very obvious that it was not a well thought out estimate.
okay, and I know Sandy's going to touch on some of those, or sort of kind of reinforce what you just said about some of the items that are commonly left out.
Yeah, and what you're going to see is you're going to, like Bob was talking about, you're going to get, and it's sort of plus and minus, because you want an insurance company that's going to react to you quickly and get you that estimate as soon as they can, but you also want one that's accurate. So the first thing I'll say is that don't freak out if you get an estimate that's super low. Know that you're going to have to do, like what Bob said, you're going to have to go through it and identify things that are wrong, because they don't know what kind of flooring is in this room. They don't know. So a lot of that is really it's tedious, but it's very, very important. And he also had a term which is something that's not, he used the term unit cost. And unit cost is a concept that's used in Xactimate, and it's really not used anywhere else other than insurance companies. And what it means is that everything, so if you take a square foot of hardwood floor, theoretically, everything in Xactimate, if they say, $50 or whatever, everything to put down a square of hardwood floor would be included in that, including materials, including site prep, including the labor to put it down, and all of that. That doesn't really happen in the real world. Builders go out and buy materials, and then they price out their labor. So it's important to know that those unit costs are not always accurate. And it's also important to know that, and you guys are going to hear from your adjuster, that the Xactimate price is X and we can't deviate from that. That is absolutely not true.
No.
Okay. It is absolutely not true. And Xactimate has a big disclaimer on the page of their program that says, that they take efforts to, reflect local building costs, but you should find out what is costing in your location at the time. You guys are gonna, we're already getting questions about people saying that prices have increased dramatically. The price lists on Xactimate are updated generally at the beginning of every month. They're doing, research on that. There's a lag time. So also custom things, if you've done something custom in your home, there's no way to account. I always say cabinets, you cannot come up with a standard price for cabinets. And they have 4 categories. They have, standard, which is not standard, it's like apartment grade. Then they have no description, it's cabinet. And then they have, my brain isn't working today, premium, or, something like that. Those don't really reflect the actual prices. So you're going to get this, they're going to depreciate it. They're going to make a payment. Don't worry about depositing the payment. You can do that, and that's fine. It doesn't mean you agree. If you're underinsured, they might just pay you the policy limits up front. Okay. So, yeah. Okay.
Sandy,
so this first check, Oh, go ahead.
Let me talk just a little on that. There was a question in the chat. And I know that a lot of people are going to be severely underinsured, and I'll just throw out some numbers. But if you had policy limits for coverage A of say 500,000, and if your adjuster's first pass at Xactimate comes out with 700,000 for your replacement cost, then it's not worth your time and brain damage to go through and try to pick that estimate apart, because their own adjuster is pretty much already admitted that they owe you for the $700,000, but oops, they really only owe you for the 500 that was your policy limit. But the point is, you don't want to waste a lot of time arguing about this, because they've already agreed to give you what you're legally entitled to.
Mhm. And the only thing I want to add to that, Bob, is that some people think when they get their policy limits that they've gotten all of their policy limits. You need to make sure you get all the little policy limits too. So we found out a lot in the campfire here in California, where, you know, a lot of people were underinsured. The insurer came in and people like, I got paid my limits. I don't have to go to any more UP webinars because I have my limits, and that's the end of that. So then they're gone for a year or two, and their you know, insurance says, you know, they go to rebuild their house and they have their extended coverage available. Well, then they go to collect their extended coverage, and maybe the estimate doesn't quite meet the extended coverage. And then the insurance company is saying, well, gee, your limits for your building plus your extended coverage are 500,000. We paid you but your estimate only shows 450. You know, so then 2 years later, they're stuck revising their estimate. So just be careful and make sure the estimate goes over all those limits if they're holding any of the money in any of those other buckets. Like if they're holding code upgrades, if they're holding extended replacement costs. So sorry, a little preach there. We'll get back on that.
No, good point.
Get back on there. So if you have a check, that's fine. It's a starting point. Go ahead and deposit it, send it to your mortgage company, write to your insurer and say, thank you. We received the check. We don't, if it's less than you think that you deserve, we don't, we believe we're entitled to more. We'll submit more information later. Okay, go ahead. We've talked about you're entitled to the cost to rebuild the home exactly as it was before the fire, up to your policy limits, plus replace code upgrade. Okay, so this is the flow of insurance funds. Sometimes you'll get an advance. Know that with advances, it's going to come, it has to be accounted for somewhere. So if they give you an advance on your building, then, you know, that's not on top of the estimate. So the first payment that they make is actual cash value. We talked about that a little bit. It is replacement cost less reasonable depreciation for items that wear out. And then once you do the work, then you're entitled to get that depreciation that they hold back. And then also on code upgrades, usually they don't pay your code upgrades until they're incurred. Sometimes during disasters, they change that, but we'll see. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about this. These typical adjusters estimates, they're thick, thick, thick. You open it up and your head just, you know, spins around. Where do you start? You might have a contractor's bid already, and there's a big gap. You know, you need to deal with that. And we'll talk more about that and what you do if you've got a gap and you've reached an impasse. Okay, so we'll talk more about that. Okay.
Let's see. This is still you, Sandy.
So let's talk about a scope of loss. When you hear adjusters speak about scope of loss, generally we mean the items that it takes, the actual items that it takes to rebuild your house, okay, lumber and carpet and things like that. When we talk an estimate, it's those items with prices, okay? So it's a price estimate. Remind your adjuster that estimates are estimates, and there is no way really to accurately estimate the actual total cost to rebuild a house. It's, you know, if any of you have ever done that, I remodeled my house a few years ago, and it just doesn't happen. You pick different things and stuff happens. So it is an estimate. So it's a work in progress. So this is just an example of things that you're going to get. Okay, hopefully there's a drawing, and we'll talk about sort of fixing things. But the very first thing you should do is, if you have a diagram attached to your estimate, take a look at it, make sure that all the rooms are there and they're generally correct, because, you know, I get people, you know, calling me up and saying, well, they left off a whole bedroom and a bathroom, and you know, so you need to address that, you know, right out the gate. And then I want to hit a few things. This is just a sample page of some estimating. This just happens to be a weirdly random one that has just skylights and windows and door thresholds. So I'm not sure. One of the things about Xactimate is that the ceiling height defaults to 8 feet. If you look up in the, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, but if you look up on the upper right-hand side of the left-hand picture, it says height 9 feet. If you have ceilings that are different than 8 feet, check your estimate, because they have to know to go in and change that. Okay. So,
All right.
whoops.
No, we're going to get to correcting the scope.
Yeah. So we're going to get to correcting the scope. So this is just an example of how it's going to look. These are your quantities. Here's when we said unit price. So like in this skylight, this reflective tube,
all you're supposed to be doing is explaining the difference between a scope and an estimate. So you're doing great.
Oh, okay. So the unit cost here, yeah, I got a little off, is right here. This is labor and materials and everything. She's right. I got a little off. So just go ahead.
Okay. So I'm just going to give you a break, Sandy. You can maybe hit a few more of those questions and explain why this matters. Why calculating the as was cost to replace the home you had is so important, before we get to how you correct a scope that's wrong. Why does this matter? And it just goes back to that what you're entitled to is what it would, that hypothetical as was rebuild up to your policy limits. So even though these days adjusters use mostly Xactimate, builders don't use Xactimate. In fact, when I talked to the gentleman who runs the Denver metro area builders association, you know, I asked him, like, are your members, those would be, you know, professional builders in that area, do they use Xactimate? He said no, hardly anybody does. So I just want people to really digest this, that we've got this situation where insurers decided to develop this tool, but it's not what gets used in real life for pricing projects. So it is the way it is. So, you know, we're here to help you navigate around that, because it's very common, not just the format of the Xactimate estimate, but also the dollars, that they don't match up, that the adjuster's Xactimate estimate doesn't match up. It doesn't look the same as what a builder would give you, and then it won't be priced the same. But because the insurer owes to restore you to pre-loss condition, it is important that you establish that as was. And we've gotten a couple questions from people who are underinsured and saying, what's the point of going through all this? And I think Bob gave you a very good answer there. It may not be worth it, but I did want to note that if you're applying for an SBA loan, or you want to see if you can, if there is a loss that you can claim, if you don't have a gain, a lot of people do have a gain. I'm giving you a preview to next week. A lot of people do have a gain, even though they feel like they had a loss because of real estate values having jumped from what you paid. But in terms of what you've actually, the financial hit that you've taken, it still is often worth doing this as was, even though very rare that you're going to want to replace that home exactly the way it was, but you want to reach an agreement with your insurer. Okay, so having that agreed scope not estimates, scope, right? Quantities, qualities, sizes, materials, trades is going to be really useful in reaching that agreement with your insurer, because problems often arise. If you try to negotiate a settlement on the new home you want to build instead of on the one you had, it can often get you off track. A lot of, I mean, adjusters are trained from day one to keep their eyes out for fraud. And if they think that you're trying to profit, build a better house, that's gonna slow down your negotiations. And again, you can build a different house and you can put in some of your own money. But before, if you want to reach an agreement with your insurer, you're going to have to nail down what that cost would have been if you did the as was. So once you agree on that hypothetical as was, it can be much easier to move forward on doing whatever it is you decide you want to do. You know, rebuilding different, buying, etc. One of the best ways to do that, because an exactament estimate and a builder's estimate are often apples to oranges, trying to reach an agreement with your adjuster on the scope of loss can really help you reconcile the price difference, right? It makes, if you have a scope that you agree on without prices, it makes it easier for you to reach an agreement. So that way you have apples to apples, so that you can, if there's a price disparity between what the adjuster estimated and what a builder is telling you the project's going to cost, it's much easier to figure out where the prices are different. Is it the carpeting? Is it the trades? If you've got a scope that you've agreed to with the insurance company. So back to you, Sandy. Talk
Okay,
about
back to what we
correcting the errors and getting this work done. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So one of the things that you need to do, and some people think that this isn't as important as I do, but I think it's really important to correct your insurer's dwelling estimate, okay, the valuation. And that is because when you get a contractor's estimate, then you'll be comparing same house to same house. If you get a adjuster's estimate that they give you and it's wrong because it doesn't really reflect your house, and then you get a builder's estimate that does reflect your house, they're going to say, well, look, you know, the only thing they can compare are the items. So I think it's really important. So like I said before, you want to check the floor plan, the room dimensions, the ceilings, we talked about that. Identify missing elements like Bob talked about, things like architecture, engineering, permits, porta potties, temporary power, scaffolding, things like that are often overlooked by the adjusters. Then you also want to identify underpriced items. Some of the stuff is going to be really hard for you. Like framing, you know, is going to be nearly impossible to do without a builder's help, but do what you can. Okay. Be proactive. Okay. And I'm going to show you an example of how to correct an error in adjuster's estimate. Make sure that when you're asking your builder or estimator, you have to get an estimate. If there's a discrepancy between you and your insurer, you have to get an estimate to replace the home you lost, even if you have no intention of rebuilding it. If you want, you're entitled to do whatever you want. I saw a question about replacing or, you know, your house. You get to build whatever you want, but the payment that they make to you is based upon what you lost. That's why it's so important to get it right. There's a lot of things you can do to help you along. You can hire someone. This really hurts me. Back in the old days, contractors, you know, they were bidding for your jobs. So they would give you estimates of the cost to rebuild your house in the hope that they would win the business. Now there's so much business, so many things have burned these days that doesn't happen. And a lot of times people have to pay for the construction estimator. And unfortunately, Carol, that is an expense that you have to pay. I feel awful about that. And I think it's wrong. And I know some places are trying to get that put on the books where they have to pay for it. But
yeah,
anyway,
Before, I just want to give Bob a chance to pop in here because I had asked him earlier whether people in his area were able to hire or had to hire estimators to help them, or whether they were able to get local builders to help them with their replacement cost estimates. And Bob, if you could just restate your answer there.
So basically, from the neighbors that I've had direct contact with, no one actually hired a separate independent estimator. But people that were rebuilding a different home, but on the same site, were able to get their rebuilder, the builder that's going to do the new home, to do an estimate for them that was parallel to the home that they were replacing. And so in that case, they were able to get really good, solid estimates from contractors that had a long track record in the county. And actually, it also blended into the code upgrades because at least a couple of contractors would put in their line item summaries. Not only, let's say, plumbing is $25,000, the next column would say plumbing code upgrade $6,000 or whatever that number might be. And so in one 8.5 by 11 summary, they were able to get not only the estimate for the home they lost, but also a summary of the code upgrade to get that bucket maximized for them.
Thank you. And we will
But
be, oh, sorry, Bob, did not mean to cut you
I,
off.
I think that what's going to happen as a result of Marshall Fire, with over 1,000 homes lost, the volume is absolutely going to just overpower the capacity of local contractors to do that kind of work. And so I think there will be a need for more independent estimators. And as Sandy pointed out, that may be a cost that is not attributable to your insurance company, but it's probably money that's worth spending if you're not able to do it yourself. And frankly, very few people have the time or the background to do it themselves. And if you don't have really good drawings and documents from what you had, it's almost an impossible task.
Yeah, and United Policyholders has beaten the bushes in Colorado for Bob's community, and we will be doing the same for your community to find estimators that are available. And we've done that in other areas, and generally they're going to charge somewhere in the neighborhood of $4,000 to $10,000. It's a chunk of change, we know that. But for some people, it ends up being money well spent if you cannot get a builder to do what Bob laid out, which is always the best, right? The best is you get the builder who's going to do your rebuild to help you provide the documentation on that hypothetical rebuild, because they know that in order for you to be able to move forward on the rebuild you want to do, that you need to reach that agreement with your insurer. No guarantees, but we will be offering additional support on this, and that's why we are in touch with the local builders associations in your area. And so stay tuned for more support on that. Okay, Sandy, next slide.
Okay, yes, we talked a little bit about reality. Builders don't use Xactimate. They use, subcontractor bids, material pricing, different ways. It's very hard to compare. I'm looking here at a question we had. Rob got an estimate that was a single line item for the dwelling estimate. Which is ironic from a insurance company, because we used to, joke about sometimes contractors would submit bids that said, remove and replace one house, $300,000. It's impossible for you to know what your house is, what it's going to cost to rebuild if they don't itemize it, unless they paid you all of the policy limits. So that's where I'd start. This is just a thing on Xactimate. I don't think we really we've gone through this. Just know that it's not coming down from on high. Xactimate is not the last word in everything. And Colorado has actually issued a bulletin that the use of estimating programs, if the insurer is using it, they need to consider other factors, okay? Because there are things that are hard to estimate. with Exactament, like slope, the grade that the building's on, if you're on a slope, increases in labor and materials. I talked about that a little bit earlier. And it talks here about insurers should adjust their pricing to reflect the specific reason and pay the prevailing competitive market price. So this is great. I wish we had this in California. Know it exists. And if your adjuster tells you, because you're going to get them, your adjuster telling you, I'm sorry, that's the Exactament price, that's what we have to use. Even without a law, that's not true. But you guys have a law, so that's good.
Yeah, and Bob, this was not in place for your fire, so I think the folks that have been impacted by the Marshall fire, I know, if you're thinking, gosh, this legislation sounds great, but it's not going to help us. Your division of insurance is being very proactive in issuing things like this, bulletins to help you. And in some ways, that's just as good as having legislation. So, okay.
Since we're on the Exactamente topic, let me just throw out another one. And this is not one that I recommend, but at least one of our folks in Grand County was very successful with this. Turns out Exactamente is a software program that anybody can buy a license to. And one of our neighbors, actually John Pratt, who's been very, very involved with helping people from the Marshall fire too, he actually went out and I think he bought it for a 1-month license. I think it was $200 or something.
It's $300 now, but yes, it's $300 bucks.
So for $300, and I suspect we have a number of people from the Marshall fire that have strong technical backgrounds that could probably take that software package and use it to their benefit. And I know he used it to his benefit. For me, I'm not a techie guy. It would not be useful for me. But just as a piece of information, if you do a Google search on Exactamente, my understanding is you can buy a test run without investing a lot. And it may be that particularly if several neighbors have the same houses or very similar houses, it might be a way for people to get a communal effort to perfect an Exactamente number. But you could end up spending a ton of time in this process. I'm not recommending it. I'm just throwing it out as a possibility for a true do-it-yourself. And if you're really underinsured and you're competent with software, this might be worth exploring.
And you have a lot of time, because I've been using Exactament since it's rolled out. They rolled it out. I was at State Farm, and we were one of the first companies to adopt it. And it still takes me hours and hours and hours to get these right. It's very, very tedious, but it is for resourceful people. I've heard of other people doing that too. And it's great. I love it.
But just for those of us who would not want to venture there, just to understand that the deal with Exactament is that there's default pricing, but you can manually override, and that's the key. Right, you can manually override the default settings, and if you know how to do it,
yeah. And the thing about it, if you're techie, it'll be good. The hard part about it's fairly easy to learn the system, but there are so many bazillions of line items that one of the things, there's a constant ongoing battle with roofers on the line item for demolition to remove a roof with a demolition code or demolition using a roofing code. Like, it has to do with the skill of your labor. And the prices are like double if you use the roofing code. So one of the little esoteric things is sometimes there's more than one line item you can choose for that thing that you lost. And one of them, so that's where it comes in, is finding, and the other thing is, you have to find everything. You have to put in every single outlet. So I think that's something that's important when you're fixing your estimate. Think about like how many outlets and switches are in each room. They have to be added manually. Okay, so those types of things. So just to go back, if you can go back one, Amy.
For sure.
Yeah. So the goal is to fix it and get it as close as you can the goal is to have them do the work. Okay. So at the beginning, everybody goes to the last page, or if it's State Farm, they go to like the second page and they look at the bottom line, and it's, you know, it's scary because it's wrong. But at first I try to tell people, don't worry about the numbers, because a lot of times when you fix the estimate itself, then your numbers will get a little closer and you'll have fewer things to worry about on price. Okay, so focus first on the details. Very important. Okay, and these are the details. Okay, so we've done, and back before COVID, we did a great workshop with some of our campfire people where we got together live with a bunch of contractors and estimators, and everybody brought their exactament estimates. And the way I teach people to do it is to start with your most familiar simple room. Okay, so like your bedroom, if your bedroom is relatively simple, if it's a complicated master bedroom, then start in a guest room and just do a visualization exercise. You know, visualize the room, be systematic about it. Either start at the ceiling and work your way down, or start at the floor and work your way up. It doesn't matter. But first off, think about the size, like we talked about. Okay. Think about the ceilings. You know, what were they? Were they just drywall with one light in the middle? Were they soffited? Did they have panels? You know, were they special? Did they have rounded corners? And then work your way down, okay? And then on the walls, did you have, talk about the doors. Did you have, like I have these glass doors in my house. A lot of times the adjusters will just put DOR. That's the code for just door, just a hollow core door. Well, that doesn't work if you have a different type of door. And then doorknobs. I mean, it's kind of tedious, but make sure they have doorknobs in there. Make sure they have the thresholds. How many doors did you have? How many windows did you have in that room? Visualize it and see if they have it in there. Did you have any special texture on your walls? Was it smooth? Was it that textured, you know, material? Window coverings. We talked about switches. Then go down, baseboards. Were your baseboards regular, you know, small baseboards? Were they big multi-piece baseboards? And then your flooring. So just go through that, visualize your room, and try to see if everything that was in there is in your estimate. I always say you can get a good idea of how good the adjuster is with Xactimate if you look at a room and they're systematic like that. You know, they can jump around a little bit, but for the most part, you should be able to follow their thought process, either from the ceiling down or from the floor up. Where you start to worry is if you've got, like, I mean, obviously drywall is going to be walls and ceiling, but if you have like a light fixture and then a baseboard and then a window, and then, you know, when it's all around like that, it's really, really difficult, but that's also a sign that your adjuster's just kind of flailing around. So go ahead, Amy. Okay. So one of the things that you can do is you can talk to your adjuster and ask them to provide you a scope of loss for your house that does not include prices. Okay. It is a very simple thing for them to produce. They go into the estimate and they check a box and they print out just a different version. So if they tell you they can't do that, they either don't know how to use the program or they're lying. Okay, those are the only two options. So when you get that, it kind of cleans things up a little bit. So if you look at this is a scope. This doesn't have any prices. So it kind of makes it easier to look at. And so like this pantry, you look and you see, is it 7 by 7/8? And did you have one door? I just used a really simple room to make this example. Certain things like underlayment, you might not know that you have particle board underneath your, you know, vinyl flooring and what kind of preparation needs to go, but know that there is something under there. Okay, underneath all your floor, there's some sort of there's a subfloor, and then there's some sort of an underlayment in most cases. And then like this vinyl plank flooring that they have here, this person knew the brand name of their flooring and was able to give me the price. So go through, okay, so this is this, and go through, make sure your quantities are right and that your things are right. Go ahead, Amy. And then make a copy. Shoot, I don't know if it's my internet or yours, because mine did not change. Make a copy.
Bob, can you see the slide that says make corrections?
No, I'm just seeing there's a red circle in the upper right corner that says 2 feet or something.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, there we go. There it is. It popped in.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so make a copy, get out your red pen, just like you were if you were a teacher, and fix the thing. So in this case, the ceiling height, which is in that upper right-hand corner, it says 10.6. Well, the ceiling in this room was actually 12 feet. So you fix that. The baseboard, line item 45 there, they have 8-inch hardwood. Well, it was a 12-inch base, okay? And then a 49 interior door, that door needed to be completely removed. So mark it up. I know it's kind of messy what I did here, but mark it up and send it back to them and insist that they correct their estimate. And you can do it as many times as you need to. And their job, remind them, their job is claims adjuster. This is adjusting a claim. This is exactly in their job definition. So I've had people push back. You need to be really insistent. Okay, and then this is an estimate. So you can see how it's a little bit more. Then once you get sort of where you understand your scope and you feel like it's right, then they can print an estimate which has, you know, the prices. And this breaks it down into how much they're paying to remove the item, how much they're paying to replace the item. It's got tax and it's got contractors, overhead, and profit. And this is how you want it broken down so that you can see the components that go into everything. Now, it's important, you know, to know that like the removed price is pretty much just labor, okay? But the replace price is materials plus labor. So say for instance, you have a floor that you know cost, you know, $20 a square foot. And if they have $12.50 for materials and labor, you know that you're off. And they can go fix it if you provide them documentation. Okay. And then, okay, so this is the big ticket item. Make sure that your adjuster provides you what is called a recap by category. Okay, and again, this is something that requires one checkbox in their report menu. So it's very easy to produce. It's you know, so this is something that you can use with your contractor, at least to try to get an idea. So when your contractor, they don't let anybody tell you that you have to have an exact estimate to compare to theirs. You do not ever. It only has to be broken down reasonably well enough so you can compare items, okay? And this is it, you know. If something, so say for instance, like this appliance is really low. This wasn't a total, but this appliance is only $2,000. Well, if you get a insurance estimate and your appliances are only $2,000 and you've lost every appliance in your house, then that tells you that you need to go back and look at, did they get the dishwasher? Did they get the refrigerator? Did, you know, all of those appliances, and then look at them. This can give you an idea of where you need to focus with your contractor. So if you give this to your contractor, and some people block off the prices and just say, can you please give me your estimate with, you know, these categories, and then compare them. But like if their roof is, you know, $15,000 and your contractor's roof is $30,000, then you know you need to work on that and figure out, maybe get subcontractor bids and and focus on that. But if you have other things where you're close enough, then you can just leave those and you don't have to worry about them.
So Sandy, I think you've hit on really one of the most important features of Xactimate, which is this trade summary.
And it's shocking how many people don't print it.
It's kind of buried almost. It's at the back end of the 93 pages or 120 pages or whatever. But I was able to take this trade summary, and by sitting down with our builder, who's very familiar with how much appliance packages cost and how
Mhm.
much roofs cost and so forth. And we went through this in maybe an hour, and he could specifically say, oh, this one is way low. Yeah, that's probably about right. Here's one that's a little high. Maybe we'll just let that one ride. But
Mhm.
this speaks to the contractor's language
Yep.
and their system. So this is a very good way in a short period of time. Forget the first 90 pages, just look at the trade summary, and then based on what you learn from the trade summary, if there are glaring errors, now you can go back into the guts of the Xactimate estimate. But otherwise, you're going to die an early death waiting through the first 90 pages of gibberish, whereas you could start back here and have the big picture.
So I've got two great nuggets here then that I've pulled from what you two have been talking about. One is get your adjuster to give you a printout without pricing. So get them to print out just the scope. And then the other is to find the trade summary breakdown in the Xactimate estimate. Now, is it your experience, both of you, that the estimate that an adjuster will provide to the policyholder typically always contains a trade summary breakdown?
No, in fact,
They no.
our first estimate did not have this.
Okay.
And I was struggling through it, trying to figure out how this worked. And then they sent me another one a week later and said, oh, we've updated this. And it magically had the trade summary. And now all of a sudden I had something that I could get my arms around and make sense of.
Okay.
Yeah, and if your
It's
estimate doesn't have the trade summary, just call them up or send them an email and ask for it. Because like I said, it's very easy. They don't have to do anything.
Mhm. Okay. Great. Okay, let's all take one more deep breath, and we're getting into the home stretch here. This has been a outstanding program. I know we've gotten a lot of questions answered, but the ones that we don't get to tonight, we will absolutely get to on March 2nd during the Q&A. So okay, I'm going to cover closing gaps and reaching agreement. So as you've been hearing, the dollars are in the details. Do what you can to provide your adjuster with as many pre-loss details about your home as possible. But if there is a gap between the insurer's numbers and yours, you want to try to isolate where and why there's a gap. Is the scope complete? Are the details for the interior finishes correct? Are the prices accurate? Are there categories missing? We have a note there, be accurate, don't exaggerate or pad. I wish that went without saying, but it always a good reminder that the one thing adjusters have eagle eyes for is any kind of overreaching. So not adding anything you didn't have, of course, very important.
Amy, there's an interesting question that's been raised on that line. What happens if the adjuster puts in an item that's more expensive or that the insured didn't actually have and it's to the insured's advantage? The insured is not padding the numbers. The adjuster basically gave it to them as an extra bonus. What's the right way to respond to that if you find it?
I'm going to throw that one to my colleague Sandy first.
I am an expert witness, so I am answering that you should bring it to their attention and have them correct it. Is the proper thing to do. And that's what I say under it.
Yeah. So, it's a tough one, especially if you're underinsured and you feel like, hey, if there's anything to my advantage, but I think the safe bet, Bob, is if you see it and it's pretty blatant, you should call it to their attention. I mean, there's good reasons for that too, because, establishing and maintaining your credibility with your adjuster will pay dividends. But Bob, do you see it differently?
No, am inclined to agree. I think there is a big gray area. If it's a big dollar item, I think ethically you're obligated to point it out. If it's $100 item, you could argue it both ways.
Yeah. Yep.
You don't want to establish a reputation as trying to always cheat the system in your favor. But if it's a gray area, I guess I wouldn't lose sleep over letting it go.
Yeah. I think those are all good perspectives. So how can you close the gap where the insurer's dwelling valuation is lower than what a builder is estimating the real cost to repair or replace the home, and setting aside what your policy limits may be, if you have enough coverage and it's just a question of whether the insurer is lowballing the cost of replacing your dwelling. The first and easiest thing is to set up a face-to-face meeting. If you have a builder that's given you an estimate, and have them sit down with you and with the insurance adjuster to have a conversation and reconcile the differences in their pricing and the scope. But given how busy builders are in your area, it may be hard to get one to create a sufficiently detailed estimate, let alone attend a meeting or prepare a scope that can be compared apples to apples with the insurers. But since we've taught you how you can get that scope from the insurer without pricing, and then you can work on fixing it, it's still, there are some ways that you can make it feasible for a builder just to put a relatively small amount of time into helping you explain to the adjuster why their pricing is wrong for the area and for the home that you had. We talked about hiring an estimator, and that it might cost in the neighborhood between $4,000 and $8,000 depending on the size of your project. It's something that I know is very hard for us to recommend people spending money. It's kind of like for people who have partial losses. Sometimes we say, if you feel like your insurer is being too casual about the health risks to you, and they won't pay to have a proper cleaning done or to have testing done, it may be worth it to you and your family to lay out some money to get yourself on the right track, even if it means laying out some money out of pocket. It's not advice we feel comfortable giving, but in this situation, given the reality of how much competition there is for builders and how busy they are, it very well may be worth your while to find the money to pay an estimator to create a really solid estimate to take to the insurer for your negotiations.
And
Just
so,
feel-
Amy,
Sure.
on that
Yeah.
note,
Yeah.
I want to just insert that there is a list of independent estimators that Valerie Brown and I interviewed about a year ago, specifically for the Grand County Builders Association. So, Valerie, if you could put in the chat the link to the GCBA website. If you go to that website and look under fire recovery, you will find a list with contact information for 6 independent estimators that we believe are credible people that have reasonable backgrounds. We don't know if they're available these days or anything else, but when we interviewed them, they seemed like they could be helpful to people from a fire loss. And I know that the Metro Home Builders Association for Metro Denver is in the process of working on similar resources
They are.
to help people from the Marshall Fire, but I don't know when that's going to be available. And certainly the people we talked to that were credible to work in Grand County, I suspect would also be credible for Marshall Fire survivors.
Absolutely. Thank you. So what are your options for breaking the logjam here? Speak up, provide documentation to your insurer on the as-was replacement cost valuation, try that in-person meeting or consultant if need be. and assert your rights. You can request help from the Department of Insurance. You saw that bulletin that they put out. They want to help you. They're telling the insurers that they cannot rely solely on Xactimate to value the losses. There are 3 dispute resolution processes that are available to you. There's something called appraisal, which is unique to insurance. It's not like a real estate appraisal. You can go on our website and you can type in the search box appraisal, and we have a really good chart, sort of a graphic that shows you what the process is. It's kind of like arbitration. Insurance appraisals are supposed to be fast and inexpensive. Public adjusters are very familiar with the process because it's a kind of an inside game, but it's a way of, if all you've got in the way of a dispute with your insurer is the cost of your of replacing your dwelling, and you're not underinsured, but it's just a matter of they're lowballing you, appraisal can be a really good way of breaking that log jam. And then, of course, litigation, and these days, the 99.7% of all lawsuits end up getting resolved in mediations, not going all the way to a trial. Mediation is where you sit down with your attorney, and the insurance company sits down with theirs, and you have a mediator in between that tries to bring the 2 sides together. In some states, there are insurance mediation programs that the state sponsors. You don't have that in Colorado, but very much, insurers, you don't necessarily need a lawyer to try to resolve something like this. And a mediation can be something informal, in that you can just ask your insurance company to say, instead of going to appraisal, instead of us filing a lawsuit, how about we get a mediator and try to reconcile the two valuations that are competing. So just some words of wisdom from one of our other wonderful volunteers, somebody who lost his home in a wildfire. The loss of your home is a deeply emotional loss. And emotion is the enemy of a good business deal. When dealing with contractors, suppliers, insurers, banks, and other businesses, the more you resist emotional decisions, the better it will turn out. Don't let your insurance company profit off of your emotions. And by that, I think he's really getting at, try to stick to the facts and the numbers, because of course the process should be easier. Of course, there shouldn't be these obstacles. Of course, you shouldn't be underinsured. Those are absolutely true. But where you are is where you are. And so, just a lot of what we're trying to give you here is that ammunition, so that you can go into this as a negotiation and you can be successful as you go. So a lot of guidance available on our free library online. You can read more on the scope. You can watch some of the more in-depth presentations we have hosted, and you can hear Sandy speaking in more detail. You can read those publications that are listed here. You can also learn or hear some of the perspectives of people like Bob, who went through this and came out on the other end and have some good nuggets of wisdom to share with you. These are the names of some of the publications written by survivors in that part of our library. Just a reminder that time is on your side. Statistics show that the longer your claim stays open, the more you are going to collect from your insurer, that you can ask for advances and extensions, even if your adjuster says, well, that's not authorized in the policy. That's where your Department of Insurance comes in. They have been very, very strong in telling insurers publicly, we expect you to show compassion. We expect you to show flexibility. And we expect you to meet the obligations that you have to the people that paid you money for protection. But fully and accurately documenting and valuing major losses takes time. There's no 2 ways about it. Please do stick with us. Follow us on social media if you are so inclined. stay informed, help us reach your neighbors. If you encounter folks who've been impacted and they've never heard of UP or what we offer, please do let them know and encourage them to sign up to be on our mailing list. This is that slide I showed earlier with some of the upcoming events that we will be hosting. Everything we offer is free. These are some of the other sources of support and help that are available to you. Case managers are getting situated in your area. Those are folks that are basically social workers that may be able to help you with things like unmet needs and things that your insurer is not covering, etc. And of course, your elected officials. You've got some really proactive public officials in your region, as you probably all know. The mayor of Superior was one of the really good witnesses last week at the legislative hearing. And there's a lot of people really going to bat for you in this process. A final thank you again to the Community Foundation of Boulder County for supporting our program so that we can be there for you in your community. And one last thank you to our speakers, Bob and Sandy, and then our interpreter, Karina, Eva, that you can't see, Val, you can't see, but the folks at UP that are rooting for you and doing our best every day to be responsive to your questions. I think somehow or other, we got through all the questions pretty much that were in the chat, but there's a couple stragglers that we haven't gotten to. We will be running a report at the end of today where we can see anything that didn't get answered, and we will make sure to add those to the questions that we'll be answering, that our panel will be answering on March the 2nd. So I wish you all a good rest of your evening. I hope that you are getting sleep, and just know that there's a nonprofit that really is on your side, and that we will be here with you in the months ahead. So thank you for your time and attention, and that will conclude tonight's program. The recording will be available on our website in a few days for you to watch. Thanks again, Bob. Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.